Welcome to the Postgame. Welcome, patrons. Thanks to everybody who makes this show possible, each and every member of the crew, each and all of our guests, such as the great Mike Recine, hanging out with us tonight. And each and every one of you patrons, appreciate all of you immensely. Joining us now is our regular debunk segment partner and friend and colleague, Ben Burgis. He teaches at Perimeter College, teaches logic, philosophy. He's the author of Give Them an Argument, Logic for the Left. He's a regular columnist for The Jacobin. He also presides over a great Patreon page, which you should also Patreon. Ben, how are you doing? And are you ready for a year?
Absolutely.
I want to go to mockery really bad. So please go.
Okay.
You got to restrain me. Debunk all of it. Logical analysis. You're going to show us how to argue that. Go.
This is based on data from a bunch of different countries. There's abundant evidence that at this point that's bullshit. Breaking down these right-wing arguments and looking at how they're supposed to fit together.
Okay, break it down. Break it down. Break it down. Break it down, man. All dogs should be treated equally, man.
Yo, get out there and bust those Proud Boys' heads. I'm the mayor. Send them to hell. Honestly,
that's not even me though. I feel like all the I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm not that invested in those. Oh yeah. Oh right. Yes, if I was mayor of Portland.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
I'm sorry, you said that off mic, and now I'm ratting on you.
No, you are totally. But I don't. That's fine. No, that's true.
I broke my Italian code.
You all the time.
Yeah,
you're a natural born snitch.
Yeah.
You have the Italian code of half of Henry Hill. But no, if I was mayor of Portland, I would say there is one area where you can exercise police brutality, and that's obviously on the Proud Boys. However, it would be a problem because I think there's a bigger problem in the Portland PD. But anyways, we don't have time for all of that,
okay.
Mike.
Sorry.
We have to get to the debunk. Ben Burgis, Ezra Klein, he redeemed himself a little bit by exposing the horrific belief systems of Sam Harris, but he's still pretty whack. And he just wrote a column a couple of days ago called Leftist Liberals and Neoliberals Share a Problem, Congress, not neoliberalism, hamstrung the Obama's presidency. This is important because this isn't just a close history argument about Obama and how that administration worked. This actually has big implications for the theory of change that different candidates are arguing in 2020. Ben, debunk Ezra. Take us back to shul.
Absolutely. So, first of all, Ezra does the thing at the beginning of the article that people like him always do, which is play dumb about what neoliberalism means. So he says, for example, here, Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher were neoliberals. Bill Clinton is often seen as a neoliberal. Barack Obama is sometimes considered a neoliberal. Elizabeth Warren is occasionally called a neoliberal. A label that can describe everyone doesn't usefully describe anyone.
Oh, God.
About which I would say, if you think that's everyone, then that kind of tells me everything. Thatcher and Clinton, I mean, you just described the whole spectrum, right? That's everybody.
Right.
Of course, what neoliberalism means, and, I'm always amazed to see all these, highly educated pundits just express confusion about it. Like they just never thought to look it up or ask anyone, is the revival, hence neo, of more laissez-faire, hence liberal ways of managing capitalism. So more market-based, means-tested programs, if they're going to be social programs, etc., which, of course, clearly describes both those conservative figures and the market-oriented centrists in the Democratic Party like Bill Clinton and Barack Obama. And again, that just seems like something that you really shouldn't get paid to talk about politics if you genuinely don't know. And if you do know, I don't know why you're doing this sort of cute act about not knowing.
Right.
But in any case, so he says, so he does the song and dance about not quite being sure what neoliberalism is, but he says people say Obama was a neoliberal, and people in particular say the sort of neoliberal limitations of Obama's ideology have something to do with the failures of the Obama administration. And at that point, he says, well, no, that can't be, right? Because the failures of the Obama administration really had nothing to do with the limits of his political vision or anything that might have been ideologically wrong with Obama, because after all, anybody who was politically different, read Bernie Sanders, would have had to deal with the same Congress, so they just wouldn't have gotten anything done either, right? That's going to be his argument. So to be deeply nerdy about it, this is what's called an enthymeme, which means a argument where not all the premises are explicitly stated.
Matt, I would like my board, please. Can you say that again?
Yes, Michael, that's an enthymeme.
All right, go ahead. Thank you.
Which is often legitimate because there are lots of, it'd be ridiculous to explicitly state all your premises all the time. Lots of things do go without saying. But in this case, what he's treating as going without saying is actually pretty dubious once you actually draw it out. So the unstated premise here is that the composition of Congress would have been exactly the same from 2010 to 2016, regardless of what Obama did or what he advocated or what he was about or what strategy he pursued. That that we're going to have that Republican-dominated Congress no matter what.
Right.
And that's absurd. Right? That they're like, the obvious objection to that premise is that there are elections every 2 years, and if you can get your base something to get excited about, they might actually come out.
Well, and in addition to that, that's absolutely true. And in addition to that, there was even an argument that was contemporaneous about the idea that starting out of the gate, Barack Obama, who in the beginning of his term had a 70% approval rating, could have, instead of basically for a couple of months pretty much not, giving interviews and so on, but not being out interacting with the public that much and holding these, laborious, horrifying inside baseball negotiations, and then also letting different Senate committees write their own version of the healthcare bills and letting that process go on forever, that if he went across the country, and granted, like, this would have been not even remotely as ambitious as Bernie, but just went out and said, like, actually, we're going to protect homeowners. We're going to have a healthcare bill with a public option. We're going to hold Wall Street accountable. The other theory, and again, that was literally contemporaneously argued, was that Obama would have had momentum for even like the center-left reforms that he campaigned on, and would have maintained more of his popularity by the act of millions of people not losing their homes. And one more further piece of evidence is that in fact, after letting this disaster drag out, and obviously the racism and astroturf of the Tea Party and the Republicans were a huge part of it too, but that has to be factored into the analysis. In fact, it's silly to just limit it to Congress. It's like a whole political warfare against the first black president on every front.
Sure.
But that when after Scott Brown won that special election in Massachusetts, that was when Obama finally said, we're going to do this through reconciliation. And he actually started going out and campaigning and using some of his incredible political gifts. So even to do what at the end of the day was a center-right consumer protection plan, and there was a really good Medicaid expansion that the Supreme Court struck down in part, he actually did what you were talking about. So yeah. Ezra Klein, fake news.
Absolutely. And just to put a little bow on that, the idea that Obama could have pursued the sort of aggressive grassroots mobilization strategy to try to change that political reality that somebody like Sanders was talking about using to get his agenda done is like, coming out of the 2008 election, Obama had a huge grassroots organization. Right. Like there was, people were tremendously mobilized in that election. And infamously, Obama pretty much, there was a few months of radio silence after he was elected, and then he pretty much dissolved it. He kind of gave them the DNC as the forwarding address. You want to help out? Here's where you go. Instead of using it the way that like Corbyn uses momentum or Sanders uses our revolution, which would be the kind of thing that would go with this more aggressive strategy that like Obama we saw over and over and over again, his strategy was to appeal to the better angels of the Republicans' nature. Hey, if we if we nominate Merrick Garland, they can't possibly look so gauche as to not go along with that.
Come on, Merrick Garland's, everybody likes him. Mitch McConnell would never be unethical or underhanded. I just have to believe on some level that the world is the Harvard Law Review.
Exactly.
Ben Burgis, as always, we learned so much. People immediately go order a copy of Give Them an Argument, Logic for the Left. Check out Ben's Patreon page. Read his columns in the Jacobin. Look forward to some columns from Ben and I that are co-written as well.
Yep. By the way.
Yes.
Mike, I love the podcast, but I got to say, it was so much funnier with the original co-host who responded to every criminal piece of shit that you guys would talk about with, I don't know, he seemed like a good guy. People liked him in the neighborhood.
Well, yeah. Frank Terranova. Please check his stuff out. Real wild card.
No, I remember the Frank I forgot about that guy. He was like this sort of like very like
He's
funny,
a stand-up guy.
like a nebbishy, funny Gotti apologist.
Yeah.
So you'd be like, yeah, and then he was called the Undertaker of Brooklyn because he would kill homeless people for target practice, and he's just like, well, that was one part of it that maybe the media focuses on, but there was a lot of families that liked him, and he was also good for the stand-up scene in the 1980s. I remember that.
Yeah. I haven't seen him in a while. I should reach out.
You should.
Yeah.
For your show, definitely not for this show.
He's a great. If you can catch him doing stand up too, he's a really funny stand up.
I would love to see him do stand up. That's a good pull, Ben. Ben Burgis.
Yeah.
Thanks, brother.
Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Take care, man. See?
Yeah.
That's a real
people
sit down with Mike Recine listener right there.
This guy probably thinks I'm some dumb guinea, but he's listening to my show.
That's what Ben said.
Nice. Yeah.
Before the show, Ben said, "Do I get to be on with the dumb giddy tonight? Are you going to do a debunk segment with that dumb giddy from the Mafia podcast?" Let me set this up a little bit. So, this is a piece that isn't even a negative piece. There's a lot of scholarship on this. Actually, it was really big in the aughts. But Matthew Alford, writing for The Independent, this is in September 2017. On television, we have found more than 1,100 titles have received Pentagon backing, 900 of them since 2005, from Flight 93 to Ice Road Truckers and Army Wives. Washington, D.C.'s role behind the scenes in Hollywood goes deeper than you think. The U.S. government and Hollywood have always been close. Washington, D.C. has been a source of intriguing plots for filmmakers, and L.A. has been a generous provider of glamour and glitz to the political class.
I knew it.
It is a matter of public record that the Pentagon has an entertainment liaison office since 1948. The Central Intelligence Agency established a similar position in 1996. And it goes on, and we'll talk more about this on the show, to just talk about everything from script advising to logistical support to expert support, all of this stuff that skews and makes, either prestige vehicles like Zero Dark 30 that made it look like torture discovered bin Laden and glossed over all of the U.S. atrocities in the quote-unquote war on terrorism, or even a movie like Argo, which I actually like, but, tells an incredibly narrow pro-CIA perspective through this one fun, interesting adventure story. And
I never saw it, but did you watch 24?
Oh, the TV show?
Yeah, because one of my friends told me every episode of 24 was just Kiefer Sutherland like finding a Middle Eastern kid and hooking a car battery up to him. And
basically.
Yeah.
And what was perfect, though, is that 24 and Homeland are the same show. Mm-hmm. They just reflect the different, 24 is just like,
it all starts out with every episode starts out with
exactly.
They're trying to scare you.
No, 24 is like, all right, you know what? Fine. We got to put a car battery on this kid's nuts. And Homeland was the Obama era. So it was just like, I studied anthropology at Swarthmore, so I feel bad about liquidating this Palestinian village, but I'm seeing into the abyss of evil.
Yeah.
So the point is that the CIA and the Pentagon, and even Thaddeus Russell made this point to me once, actually, how, even if you watch like sometimes 80s or 90s movies, it might be like, oh, you know, the bad guy's some general or something. And now like almost always, even in like the comic book movies, you know, the military is valorized. Which is all to say, this ad for this new Amazon series is next level with Jim from The Office and Bunk from The Wire. This is so bad that like they at least deserve a few unpleasant tweets for this, I would say. Check this ad out.
Major threat on the world stage. Venezuela is the single greatest resource of oil on the planet. So why is this country in the midst of one of the greatest humanitarian crises in history?
I can't watch this. It's so embarrassing.
Your concern is that the Russians are secretly selling weapons to Venezuela?
It would fit a pattern.
Fit a pattern.
This ends up in the news.
Pause it.
It's
I'm
just going
sorry.
to cause panic.
By the way, this Crosby, Stills, Nash song is actually a great song, and it's been overused in a million, like, all right, we're having a hippie montage, let's play that song again. They're doing a cover of it to promote war on Venezuela. I just want that to sink.
I think it's Buffalo Springfield, and the only reason I'm correcting you is because I'm doing it before the people on the internet.
I thought it was Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young. Am I wrong? I
think
don't know. Who
it's-
cares? Whatever. Look. Don't
No, I
bring.
just don't want
do
the
not
trolls
bring
coming
your
after
boomer
you.
shit to me.
Yeah.
The point is, it's an
Yeah.
honorable hippie song, and it's supposed to be in a montage of people putting flowers in each other's hair, not promoting invasion of Venezuela with a disgusting hacky remake of the Cuban Missile Crisis. All right.
This ends up in the news. It's just going to cause panic.
In nuclear Venezuela, you will not hear about in the news because we'll already be dead.
Business a pleasure.
If that actually happened, the first conversation any of these people would be having is, how do we get this into the news?
Yes. All right.
Everybody's
No one could actually believe that literally. Yeah. Well, although, how do we get this in? The one thing I will give them, how do we get this in the news in a way that completely overlooks the gargantuan intelligence failure that allowed Russia to deposit warheads secretly in our hemisphere of our prime imperial domination? Okay, sure.
Business a pleasure, Jack.
I'm here for work.
Ew. Jim from The Opposite sucks.
What happened? Reyes! Look at me. Was his name ever mentioned?
You guys stay. You have no protection. Nobody's coming to save us.
We do this together. I can live with that.
Well, the Bolivarian government looks super effective. Wow.
What's happening that though? Russia's selling weapons to Venezuela so Venezuela can nuke us?
So what is, I like that. That's like, I like
Is
how
that,
they-
is that what's, I just realized that because I've
That's
seen that trailer
literally
a
the
bunch
ad.
of times. Yeah.
I love how they can't even give you like, this is a deterrence that will keep the dictatorship in place. It's like literally a government. Like there's enough lies and exaggeration about this government to begin with, but then it's like, no,
Talk about the Maduro
the
government.
Maduro government wants to nuke New York City. Yeah.
I mean, they have no imagination. This is literally like 2003 propaganda.
Yeah, after Maduro has a stake there.
Yeah. Maduro's like, yeah, exactly. I want to tour a soccer field, have an empanada, and yeah, I want to nuke New York and D.C. Even radiologically, that wouldn't make sense.
Yeah.
Is there something comforting about how bad a propaganda that is, though?
Yeah, maybe.
No?
I don't know.
It's just so embarrassing, though.
I
don't think you need to be that sophisticated to see that that's embarrassing.
I had a number of people. I tweeted out when this happened. I said, "Fuck Jon Krasinski."
Right?
And
Like
I had people being like, "Why don't you wait for the show?" Like people that follow me.
Block.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to take it. I can't help it. Definitely
But
a
they
Venn.
don't
People who tweeted, well, you wait till that show. There is a Venn diagram for Elizabeth Warren's just as progressive as Bernie Sanders. That is some insane, naive shit right there. Why don't you see what they do? Maybe there'll be a plot twist.
I mean, the crazy thing, who's the director of this? I forget who it says, but I think I added him too. And the guy was trying to suggest that they didn't write, they're not responsible for the script, and that they're sort of workers. And it's like, if you're on the poster guy, you get the heat.
I love it. I love the new victim mentality. It's like, hey, I'm just doing what Jeff Bezos demanded a.
So much for solidarity.
Yeah, so much for solidarity.
That's so crazy because I watched that trailer maybe like 10 times, and I just put that together now that that's the threat that Venezuela is going to nuke us. Because I think my subconscious mind was like, surely they wouldn't. That's not the show. We're
Surely it
get
couldn't
nuked by
possibly be that
Venezuela.
stupid.
Yeah.
It's like we're in the middle of a domestic crisis, and let's just go for an all-out war with the United States military.
So in that show, the Maduro government's going to nuke the U.S.?
Yes, apparently from the ad. I guess they go from like, all right. Let's when we're done with the new provisional peacekeeping agreement in Geneva or in Uruguay or wherever they're holding these new talks, and we've given out some ministries, and we've had Guaido's people stop working with Colombian cartels to destabilize the country. Let's do a little. Let's open up a new Chavez mural to the Bolivarian Revolution, and then shoot some new Russian nukes on every main city in the United States.
I like the Russia element to this too. Like, what's Russia thinking? Like, we want to nuke America, but if we do it, they'll shoot it back at us.
Right,
So
I
we
like
gotta
that.
give
It's
it to
just
them.
like,
Well, they're
but if
closer.
we give it
That's
that
true, yeah.
way, then they will never tell. I like how it's like actually a genuine like global security threat that like the United States even selling like high lethality weapons to Ukraine,
Yeah.
right? Or even in fact like the minimal support that Russia does provide for Venezuela, those are like super touchy because they're both their respective imperial zones of influence, and it's just like the new Russian strategies.
Where are
just
the
like,
fucking nukes?
You'll never find out. We will give it to our friends, and we will have vodka and empanada and nuke all of you.
Yeah.
Coming from Amazon. All right, let's get to the
Empanada
bad.
and pierogies, yeah.
Pierogies. All right, let's get to the. I love pierogies. Let's get to the bad.
Not good. Believe me, not good. No good. Really bad for you. Not good. Believe me, not good.
Pete Buttigieg is just the worst. He really is. I'm at the point where I'm ready to say I would vote for Joe Biden over Pete Buttigieg. And this is partially what makes him so just awful. I'd say neoliberalism is a political economic consensus that has governed. Pete Buttigieg tweeted this just on September 23rd, just yesterday. I'd say neoliberalism is the political and economic consensus that has governed the last 40 years of policy in the U.S. and UK. Its failure has helped produce the Trump moment. Now we have to replace it with something better. And this is quintessential Buttigieg, right? He's infinitely smarter than some airhead like Beto O'Rourke. And he knows how to talk out of both sides of his mouth. Literally. Medicare for all who choose it is the most disingenuous political statement and misleading moneying one I've heard in my life. And he's running a campaign explicitly to the right of the Democratic Party. Anytime he's put on the mat to actually back a post-neoliberal policy, he opposes it. But he knows exactly the rhetoric.
Oh, and he tweeted this at a Bernie account?
Yeah, at a Bernie account. Yep. He tweeted at a Bernie account. So, and the thing about this guy is, as Matt Karp pointed out, he's 35. We're going to be dealing with him for the rest of our lives.
And his skin will look better than ours, too. For the
not sure about that one.
right.
Alfred E. Newman. He doesn't have that Sicilian resilience, Mike.
Right. Thank you.
Put an olive oil on. I do my laundry at my mama's, then I talk about Gambino family on my podcast. Why aren't Opie and Anthony still
You
around?
sound jealous of me.
I do. Sometimes I'm very jealous. Sometimes I listen, I'm like, wait, a half-hour prepared show on the bananas? I was up all night last night reading about some Brazilian economic report. Fuck you.
I just gave up halfway.
Yeah, you're just like, yeah, so anyways, the family went into heroin and I stopped reading past 1975. Shut up, Matt. You still, all right, so that is the bad Pete Buttigieg. Anybody want to add to the Buttigieg dunk? Griscom, I know you have thoughts.
I mean, what else can you say? I mean, that's the most.
Griscom thinks he's
neoliberal-
faking a key part of his identity. We won't be any more specific than that.
No. That is all for people to speculate about. Some people speculate that there is such a lack of core there.
That he's lying about being a McKinsey guy.
And he's lying. Some people think that he actually went to Brown instead of Harvard. What are you going to say?
Oh, it's like there's nothing more neoliberal than triangulating about whether or not you're a neoliberal.
That's it. All right, that's the segment. All right, let's actually, before we get to the West Papua update, we got to go to the UK. Next week we'll do calls, guys. I'll take a few Discord questions, but there's a lot to get to. Boris Johnson suffered a big defeat. The Britain's version of their Supreme Court said that he could not prorogue, or let's be real, suspend Parliament, because in fact it is antithetical to the UK's exceedingly dysfunctional parliamentary democracy. Next week, I'm going to do another deep dive on the Liberal Democrats. The Liberal Democrats are the worst modern political party in the center. They exemplify all of the worst trends, the most disgusting trends in neoliberalism, and the fixation on them at the expense of the 21st century incredible breakthroughs in class solidarity that Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party are putting forward are incredibly disheartening. But there's huge opportunity here. And somewhere in between, a failing Boris Johnson, who nevertheless understands that austerity is incredibly unpopular, a disgusting resurgent Liberal Democrats, and a true option for breakthrough with Corbyn, I hope the UK will go the right way. This is Jeremy Corbyn. We have two different clips. I believe this is the first one, him talking about his approach to Brexit.
Oh, sorry, this is the second one.
Yeah, this one is about the NHS.
This is one is about safeguarding the NHS, which is on the chopping block with a Brexit, and also under even if a Lib Dem-led government reversed Brexit, or a Lib Dem coalition reversed Brexit, it would be on the chopping block for them too. They're all austerity parties.
My parents' generation, that wonderful post-war generation, fought hard to establish the principle of a universal health service owned and run by the public. They left it in our trust. It's our duty to defend it. We will end the sell-offs and privatisation. Our NHS is not for sale, not to Trump or anybody else. It's our NHS for our people.
Excellent. And this is, and also I agree with the strategy for Brexit that the Labour Party has outlined. Let's play it, and then Griscom, I'll throw to you for some thoughts on that before we end the segment.
The Tories want to crash out without a deal, and the Liberal Democrats want to cancel the country's largest ever democratic vote with a parliamentary stitch-up. Labour will end the Brexit crisis by taking the decision back to the people with a choice of credible leave alongside Remain. That's not complicated. Labour is a democratic party that trusts the people.
There's a lot of people in the comments who will be complaining about this, but you're wrong. And you're wrong also on the merits of the politics. There's still a lot of blue-collar Labour supporters that supported Brexit that will be susceptible to the far-right appeals. So I think it was an impossible situation. He threaded it as best he could.
And, you know, again, we have to recognize as materialists that, the Brexit that we're seeing right now is definitely representative of right-wing, anti-worker forces, right? So even if there are left-wing arguments to not be in the European Union, they don't exist. But this kind of fantasy, in the current material situation, but this kind of fantasy that we're just going to be able to do away with democracy because it's inconvenient is such a dangerous game, and it's such an obviously anti-democratic, technocratic belief system. And it's very important that Jeremy Corbyn is making this stand here that, look, they don't want to go through with this Brexit process. They're going to bring the question back to the people rather than a small group of folks, especially when we're talking about the Lib Dems, who a lot of those folks now who are Lib Dem representatives weren't elected as Lib Dems in the first place.
A lot of them are defecting far-right Tories. And by the way, not just on all of the austerity and corporate ownership of the world. We're talking people who oppose marriage equality. We're talking about virulent xenophobes. So even the pretend brand of cosmopolitan tolerance and openness that the Lib Dems have are first of all, not genuine to their record. And secondly, totally belied by the fact that they are open-armed to any Tory defector, no matter how hard right and discriminatory their policies.
And the point is that you just do not want to empower a small group of people to be able to pull away the democratic will.
Absolutely.
You give the people the question again. It's very simple. It's a good policy.
100%. All right, more on UK next week. All right, so Greta Thunberg has just addressed the UN. I talked in the main part of the show about Justin Trudeau should keep her name out of his mouth and his makeup off of his face.
We know what he likes to put on his mouth.
Yeah, right. Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on. Before I greet Greta, I actually realize I've got a little polish I need to get off my forehead. Very enthusiastic. So there was this image that was kind of funny. I mean, this is definitely of the just sort of surreal, bizarre politics of the moment of Trump walking by her, her glaring at him. Obviously he's the sort of living embodiment of everything she's talking about. Although, as is Justin Trudeau, as is the neoliberals, as I believe Christo Avalisis, who we had on recently, said they don't get it. She's talking to you. Neoliberals, she's talking to you. Now, Amy Klobuchar it's so incredible because, look, as I always said, I'm all about renewal and transformation. If she apologized for what she did to her staff, I'd never mention it, but she didn't. She just said, terrorizing my staff makes me good for Putin, which is an interesting spin.
She might throw a binder at him,
Yeah. If I here's what I would do to Vladimir Putin. I would ensure that he can never be president of Russia again, because I will call all of his references and ruin his career prospects. So, and she's of course running the most. I mean, in a way, it's almost refreshingly dreary and depressing because she's pretty much at all the debates just like, "Hey, I'm from Minnesota. You people can go fuck yourselves. Student debt relief, blow me." So, but there was at least a certain integrity to her dreary, corporatist, depressing, failing campaign. But she needed to clout chase, along with all these other vultures and scumbags, on this young person's profoundly sincere activism. So she did this. And this is, of course, a montage of Greta glaring at Donald Trump, and Amy Klobuchar's social media account saw fit to tweet, "Same." Ken Klippenstein responded with a headline of Amy Klobuchar saying, "Oh yeah, Klobuchar tempers Green New Deal goals. I'm not for reducing air travel." And of course, she also voted to increase the Trump military budget 3 times, along with Elizabeth Warren, which is one of the most destructive things you could do to the environment, period. So Amy Klobuchar, in a way, you look at the video of her dancing and you see her talking and you think, God love her. And then you see her chasing clout through exploiting this young woman who is fighting for literally everything Amy Klobuchar is acting against. And you think, maybe somebody ought to throw a binder at you. And we'll clip that out when we clip it. I don't mean that literally.
Yeah, metaphorical binders.
Metaphorical binders. What I really should have said is maybe Greta should, and only Greta.
Yeah.
Greta should glare at you. Greta should give you a good solid glare.
Greta just started attacking her. Pummeling her.
You keep my name out of your fucking mouth. Amy Klobuchar, she just the next Greta is like college. She just likes, and Justin Trudeau, F you. And Amy Klobuchar, please, you will not get voters from me. You won't get voters from anything. Your campaign is depressing.
You know, I'm not one of these people who's upset about Greta talking at all. I also think that this isn't inspirational. Like, what she's doing is setting herself to actually be like a sort of tragic,
child star
figure. Yeah, well, not exactly that, but like, we're gonna look to her as we continue to not do stuff.
Well, that's what is extraordinary to me is like, look, I'm totally open to like a broad, like I think the way this a liberal fixation, you know, and we're talking about Trudeau and Klobuchar and all these people with some type of brand association with a child savior figure is absolutely ripe for critique. But what is extraordinary, I mean, first of all, that doesn't implicate her at all. Her sincerity is abundant. But what's amazing and compounds it is, and really underlines how disgusting these people are, is that she's saying it. You know, she isn't coming out and saying, hey, this is really bad, so can we weatherize people's houses? You know, this is really bad, can we deploy more Priuses? She's saying capitalism is killing the planet and making my future prospect. Like, she literally is a young tragic figure because she represents tens of millions of people's lives that are being radically damaged by these people. So honestly, like, it's fun to joke about, but like, seriously, like, the gall of Amy Klobuchar,
well, yeah, and
who is an enemy of this. She's an enemy.
Tell you, if you want to depress yourself, search Greta and Hogwarts on Twitter.
Oh boy. I think we can agree that Harry Potter was not good.
And he wins.
He
just runs against
Harry
my
Potter. God. Yeah. They have a mock election, and he beats Harry Potter.
Donald Trump's just...
I mean, what's with the banking goblins?
Dude, yeah, very anti-Semitic. Jared was very upset by that, even though he looks like one of them. You know, this is a very serious time.
I don't even think he's magic, folks. Look at him.
He's magic. It's clearly a big dissociative fantasy to get away from his abusive uncle. We all know this. It's actually really sad when you think about it. He's just like, you know, whether you agree, some of you disagree with me kidnapping children, and I would say this, at least take the issue seriously enough to not appeal to a child's fantasy novel when you're fighting it.
You've Nate Silver, like, Harry Potter beats Trump in 200 different scenarios, and then Trump beats
I just
Harry
like the
Potter.
idea of Trump being like, you people ought to be ashamed of yourselves. I'm literally, children are dying in custody because of me, and you're talking about what house your candidate would belong to. Maybe I deserve to be your president. People make me sick. I like that. The Amazon's burning and you're saying somebody's like a fake professor in a children's book in an election? What's wrong with you people?
Oh yeah, I'm so hurt by a little girl glaring at me.
Oh wow, a child glared at me. Oh no.
Not like my own kid does that every single time.
Yeah, I was going to say, wow, another look of a disappointed, horrified child.
Somebody said this on Twitter. They were like, well, this means now we can mock Barron because they're making fun of this girl. So we can attack the kids. Yeah, right. We can attack all the right-wing kids now.
See, I could see that. You see, that would be, I could totally see it. Like, of course, like, that's a good distinction. The socialist analysis is, wow, how destructive is our phase that these, you know, troglodytes are taking aim at a kid. I could see a certain resistance person be like, oh, well, they made fun of Greta. Well, guess what? Barron's a fucking retard. Hashtag screw Barron. You're like, no. It's not. That's not the right answer. Stop.
Hey, Tiffany, you fat whore.
I mean, I've seen that. I've seen I've seen the like, you know, how's it going to be in prison, Don Jr.? Like, and it's amazing when you're sitting there like, look, of course, this conversation's boring at this point, but like, comedy's comedy, whatever. I hate all of the, uptightness about comedy across the board, but it is funny to have that perspective and then see like somebody who's like, ranting about Hillary Clinton, and the next one, it's like, did you just make like a prison rape joke?
Yeah,
like I'm not saying it can't be pulled off, but that requires a lot of like, that's an innately horrifying thing.
Right.
You just, yeah.
Why don't you go suck Putin's cock? Because you're a homosexual.
That whole like all of a sudden like the most base homophobia was just absolutely
from like 1998.
Oh yeah, it was just like
Stephen Colbert said it.
I didn't even.
Putin's cock holster.
Yeah, Putin's cock holster.
It's just like, I learned a lot from watching that Mark Ruffalo movie about lesbians and adoption. Now, anyways, Donald Trump is fucking blowing Vladimir Putin because he's not a real man.
Do you remember that movie? That movie's about Mark Ruffalo like turning out a lesbian.
100%. That movie is pure like hippie guy version of like, I flipped her.
Yeah. Like, shitty movie.
I ruined this lesbian's family.
Hell yeah, bro.
Hell yeah, bro. Like, it was like there was like a hot one, an uptight one. And I was
Hate
just
the
like,
game, not the player.
It's just so funny. It's just like so funny because it was like they're supposed to be more like sensitive or whatever, but she wasn't getting her needs met, so I came over with a bag of organic carrots, just like fucking ruined this lesbian family, bro. That was like, I love those like movies at the time.
You see a glimpse of like
big,
who they are,
liberal breakthroughs, and then you read back, you're just like, wait a minute, like, wait, this doesn't seem as more as progressive as maybe we thought at the time.
Can you imagine pitching that? Like, yeah, it's about this happy lesbian family. Then Mark Ruffalo comes in.
It's about, you did the real pitch. It's a happy
with his
lesbian family,
testosterone.
and Mark Ruffalo comes in and ruins it. Mark Ruffalo is some ne'er-do-well who's somehow involved in the periphery of the food industry.
Yeah.
And he ends up destroying this family.
He works at a farm. He's just some shithead that works at a farmer's market.
Just like,
There's not even anything special about him.
Kumquats.
Really. Yeah.
Hey, so when is your wife performing heart surgery for that kid? Because I'd like to come over and talk to Julianne Moore, man. All right, David, let's give the people, this is important. There's a way more to get to. We're definitely not going to get to all of it, but we need to talk a little bit about West Papua, and then we'll do one piece of sound and take a few Discord questions and get out of here. We talked about West Papua a couple of weeks ago in the commentary. This is a province that is primarily a minority in Indonesia, and it's been a site for decades of the dual relationship in Indonesia of military occupation and human rights abuses at the sort of in conjunction with Western capital and gold mining interests. And there were uprises and crackdowns and some tech blackouts there that sort of paralleled some of what the Modi government is doing in Kashmir. And what's happened in the last couple of weeks, David?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, basically over the past couple of days even, there has just been another really horrible, violent crackdown from security forces against the people in West Papua. 26 people were killed, around 70 injured from gunshot wounds from security forces firing into protesters. There's been another very violent crackdown, basically on student-led protests on the island, basically that came out of response to racist comments again surfacing from a teacher. So it's just something that you definitely need to be paying attention to, and also understand the larger context. What's going on in Indonesia as a whole. In the past few days, there have also been massive student-led protests. I'm talking thousands and thousands of people in Jakarta and other major cities across the country after a new law was proposed that is going to create a new criminal code that does everything from criminalize extramarital sex to homosexuality, but also, and this is very important because a lot of people in the Western press has been really fixated on the sexual aspects of this law, but they also want to criminalize the teaching of Marxist-Leninism. So there's a very, very wide new criminal code that people are actively struggling against right now, and they deserve all of our solidarity and attention.
And that like going back to the 60s, where the United States actively participated in supporting the mass murder of potentially 1 million people and conservatively hundreds of thousands of people, the Suharto government contracted gangs and paramilitaries that killed people on an industrial scale with the backing of the United States government, the CIA. And if you watch like a documentary like Brief History of Seven Killings, you see that, in fact, these paramilitaries, these gangsters are still, there's been not only not like a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, they're valorized in the country. So even as there's been modest reforms, there's still this legacy of people who've committed mass atrocities. And in this case, it was, I mean, it certainly, if you go to East Timor and so on, Indonesia it's targeted minorities and other ethnic groups. But in this case, actually in the 60s, literally, it was a mass murder campaign against those on the left. It was somewhat analogous to like the CIA-backed Operation Condor years in Latin America.
And, you know, a lot of these folks are still around and in positions of power. Right. I know the security minister in Indonesia is actually like a wanted war criminal. So these ghouls are still hanging around in positions of power. So leftists in the country and students who are organizing these protests have, you know, very real reason to be concerned and be worried.
Absolutely. Let's play one more piece of sound. I just want to do number 4 because Killer Mike just keeps showing up and has an incredible way of campaigning for Bernie Sanders, but really also just historicizing things. That's one of the, I mean, honestly, Killer Mike is one of the best popular historicizers we have. And historicizing is the core of the project. And I'm also really happy on this stage here. I believe this is in North Carolina, Greensboro, North Carolina. You have Bernie Sanders, Danny Glover, Adolph Reed back on tour, which I'm incredibly excited about. The great Adolph Reed. Everybody needs to read Adolph Reed, particularly in this present context. And then Ben Cohen and Cornel West. I mean, look, Bernie has the best people.
He really does.
He really does. He absolutely does. And this is Killer Mike. Let's just actually.
Danny DeVito.
Danny DeVito's great.
Yeah.
Danny DeVito, Brianna Joy Gray,
Shailene.
He's got the people who are legit committed. This is Killer Mike.
You hear me? 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 Hear me?
They fix it if you're watching it.
Let's just acknowledge that young lady. She was here. She was heard. We appreciate you. Sorry we couldn't answer to Donald Trump being the devil, but it's a lot of devils out there. But the Lord knows we are here to stomp the devil and shout today. Now, I'm glad they let me go before Nina and Cornell, because, woo, they can speak. I just want to say one of my favorite writers growing up was a man named James Baldwin. And I remember Baldwin saying, you ask my father to wait, my brother to wait, my uncle to wait, how long must I wait on freedom? How long must I wait on rights and equality and liberty? And as a black child, that resonated with me because I knew I'd been denied, my father had been denied, my grandfather had been denied, and I personalized that. But as I grew, I started to understand poor white people have been denied, women have been denied, gays and lesbians, transgender people been denied. Everybody, immigrant children been denied. Everybody outside of that 1% has been denied. So I want you to take a few seconds to, like they do in the black church, look to your left and look to your right. Say, the time is now. Look to your neighbor and say, neighbor, the time is now. There are more of us. There are more of us. We're stronger. We will wait no longer. The time is now. When you go to that booth next year, I need you to carry in that booth the memory of this room. Black, white, straight, gay, men, female. We are together. We are united. Our time is right now. We will not wait 4 more years. We will not wait 20 more years. We will not wait 2 more presidents. We will not wait 3 more presidents. This is the president, the next president of the United States of America. The time is now. The time is not in the future. The time is not some abstract time. The time is not something that might be. The time ain't something that could be. The time ain't nothing that should be, that would be. When I say the time, say now. The time is. It ain't tomorrow. It ain't the day after. It ain't coming next week. The time is. It ain't next year. It ain't just next election. The time is. Senator Bernard Sanders will be the next president of the United States of America. Thank you all.
Go ahead.
I can't wait for Samantha Bee and Jen Kirkman to share a jail cell too.
The time is now. Don't listen to a whole bunch of bullshit. Don't get lost in all the toxicity and the lies and all the disingenuous nonsense. We'll fight back against it. But also, don't be a friggin' nerd. Don't squander this. Don't overthink it. That's the election. And it's that historicizing and that expansion of empathy and liberation. That's the politics. And ultimately, that is because we do need unity. We do need cross-boundary politics. We do need that shared and actual material solidarity. And Mike, that's amazing. I mean, I almost teared up when I first saw that. It's no joke.
I'm sure you've talked about this before, but it does feel like sometimes identity politics can be a little bit like divisive. And I feel like we can still acknowledge our privilege, but want everybody to, I don't know, want to build something that's inclusive for everybody and not, I don't know, be competitive about it. You know what I mean?
I think that there's I think that there are so many different versions of that term, and clearly it's deployed in neoliberal contexts and arguments to destroy solidarity.
Right.
And honestly, and even beyond that, like, there's also Mark Blythe made this, like he made that great joke. He said, okay, I'm like an affluent, privileged 50-something white male. I acknowledge my privilege. Can I keep my money? Mm-hmm. What's so incredible about how cynical these arguments have become is that not only do they cheapen the urgent fight for the rights and equity of everybody across every single line, but they've actually are deployed to undermine the material dimension. Like if you're fighting Bernie Sanders' agenda, you are fighting the biggest redistribution and restitution of wealth that was stolen from people of color, at least since Reconstruction.
Yeah, because
of how racialized these things are. So my thing that I did in my book is I think, you can't, like, identity obviously matters. And then on the other hand, the deployment of how identity is working in neoliberal and conservative politics is incredibly toxic and destructive and undermining of politics. So what we need is, again, we actually need some form of cosmopolitanism. Like, you need a genuinely global politics. You need to root it in sources from across the world in shared political struggle and resource. That's like my perspective, right? Like you look at someone like Bill Fletcher Jr. can move seamlessly between Marxism and then like specific expressions of Marxism in, as an example, like African context. But look, I mean, a lot of what, I don't know if divisive is the word I use, but I think that what is primarily represented as quote unquote identity politics in today's politics is it's not good and it will fail.
Yeah.
And again, I also think, and then the most toxic quote unquote identity politics of all is Trump. is white identity politics. We need something that's deeper, and it doesn't. And the distinction though is that I like Killer Mike is talking about a real solidarity that's rooted in real common interest and understands the history of all these different struggles in terms of gender and race. It's not the Obama thing, which is the kind of like, oh, we're all in this together. So let's skip everything. It's like a pre and a post critique. You know, like I listen to people, there's all these things that are worth critiquing in popular, quote unquote, liberal and left culture that are toxic, that are stupid, that are counterproductive, that are not strategic. I critique them a lot, but it's a post, right? You know, the right-wing critique is like the pre, right? Oh, racism doesn't exist. It's divisive to talk about police murders of black people, right? So I think from the right perspective that Mike's coming forward, though, it's like, yeah. And that's Adolph Reed. That's anti-essentialism.
Because it seems like what Mike is saying is going to do the most good for the most people.
And it will. And that's the other distinction in the argument. Like the other distinction, and it's way more justifiable, but a lot of arguments from, you know, centrist Democratic ones to obviously right-wing ones still have, you know, deserving and undeserving poor. You know, you see some people flipping that rhetoric like, oh, like look at these fucking white people in Appalachia or whatever, you know. No, nobody deserves to be poor, period. Nobody deserves to not have a home or healthcare or food or housing or, you know, period. By the way, even if they're assholes. So, yeah.
You know, and it's just, you see a lot of what people, like, you look at Bernie Sanders versus Hillary Clinton, right? And you can see how Hillary Clinton's politics were not something that were going to be very emancipatory, but because they were hiring consultants that were fresh out of, basically what I'm saying is like there's a version of identity politics, or I don't even know if that's the best term to use for it, but it's sort of like upper middle class signaling and like manners, right? And that is what becomes a little bit confusing for people, because you have consultants who are able to put out a press release by a Hillary Clinton campaign, right? And it hits all of the specific words that people want to hear. But then you look at the policies and there's nothing when it comes to actually helping people. And you see Bernie Sanders' movement, he's going across the country and he's doing events like this. You know, he was also just visiting the Comanche Nation. And the chairman of the Comanche Nation said that no presidential candidate has come to visit them since Teddy Roosevelt. Right. So you want to talk about, you know, inclusivity and building for people across the board. That's the kind of thing that Bernie Sanders is doing, is really building bridges between people and building a movement that includes so many different people, because we can recognize that we do share a common interest, while also recognizing that there are specificities to certain people's issues and plights. And that's why you need as much representation as possible.
That's 100% right. But then that leads to the third point, which is Adolph Reed and Hassad Haider make this point, which is like, and the way that you're going to actually get more people to be like genuine partners and, you know, I'll actually say comrades in this context, I hate the word allies, is by actually doing stuff together. And that's another incredible part of like how failed all the woke discourse is, because it's like, it's either like social media lectures or designed for like private consulting programs. Right. But like when you're actually engaged, this was the point of Haider's book. And I think he did a good job of synthesizing these things. But it was like part of what actually does happen in actual movements and participation together is people do start to actually get outside of themselves and understand a broader set of struggles and solidarity. But it also has to come, at least for most people. I think, you know, most people outside of the middle class, upper middle class, it comes through like actual participation. I mean, again, you know, most people really just don't have the time to be like, you know, in these spaces thinking about it one way or another. They need to, like, the things that are happening are in like the Fight for 15, and then that spills out. It happens in Black Lives Matter. It happens in these real action. It happens in the Sanders campaign. So I think that's the other component of it too. Let me take a couple of Discord questions. I'm sorry I can't get to all. Would impeachment be an opportunity for Bernie to drive home things that Trump should be impeached for, since all that will be dominate the news cycles and be a topic for future debates? Hail up to you and the crew. Thank you. Yeah, sure. I mean, you know, to be honest with you, I'm not even sure that this impeachment thing, like, I feel like it might not even suck up as much oxygen as we think. And what do you guys think?
I have no predictions about it. I mean, my thing with all this stuff is like if the sort of liberal legal team can get stuff going, like I want to see it. I don't want to like be told about how much you're going to promise.
Well, that was
Are we allowed to say that? I have no predictions.
Of course.
Nice.
I should have given you a write-up beforehand. Yeah. As part of Bernie's rent control proposal, I'm curious if there's a provision that would legally mandate new housing and commercial developments install solar panels, not simply a tax credit for people to make the switch. Well, that's much more in the Green New Deal. There's a huge amount of stuff like that in the Green New Deal. How do Russiagate and Putin's puppets obsessive handle the fact that Trump is dealing with Ukraine, who are pretty close to being at war with Russia? I don't know, man. It just goes to the next thing. Can you give a message to support and solidarity to UFCW, Local 555, calling for a boycott of all Fred Meyer stores in Oregon and SW Washington until they fix their gender pay gap? Absolutely. And maybe, God, we'll see if this is still going next week because we'll put this in the front of the show. Solidarity, that's super important. Do you have any words of advice for consolation for Canadians dealing with Liberal Party supporters who still support Trudeau? They just say that Scheer is worse and refuse to acknowledge that we have a multi-party system or that blackface is disqualifying. It gives me a brain freeze. Please help. All right, well, here's what I would say, and I'll be really blunt with you. If Justin Trudeau had suspended arms sales to Saudi Arabia and protected indigenous people's sovereignty and canceled oil deals and sanctioned Bolsonaro, I would actually be more inclined to say this is objectively disgusting, embarrassing, and most importantly racist, and people can evolve and change. So I do, as it's pretty obvious by my politics, I find, and I doubt you would be someone who would do this, I find some people who are able to overlook the selling arms to Saudi Arabia is not disqualifying, but this is. So I want to dispute some of that. But I just think at the end of the day, man, I mean, I don't know why people wouldn't flip to Jagmeet Singh and the NDP. That's definitely who I would vote for. I don't know. I mean, my closest read from some broad set of people I've talked to in Canada, a couple of people I've talked to in Canada, is just the same thing we have here, man. They don't want a conservative government. I mean, I get it. I don't know. I encourage them to vote NDP, though. K-State Nate, I thought Alona was going to be more often a co-host. What happened to that? Well, it's still happening. It's just scheduling. It's just, people have busy lives, but she will definitely be back.
Also, we only do 4 shows a month.
Yeah, we only do 4 shows a month, guys. Although in my head, I count the post-game and the Sunday shows.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we do 25.
A lot. Okay, final question. Thoughts on the latest protests in Egypt? They're the first major protest since the 2013, which, of course, along with the military coup, led to Morsi's ousting. Well, I think it's fascinating because I think that they're, another one that is really centered on austerity and dealing with the economic dimension, and it's really important. And frankly, I should have talked about Morsi when he died. I mean, Morsi was not somebody I supported politically, obviously, but there clearly was a coup. He was democratically elected, and Egypt is in really horrifying shape, and it's another thing that implicates the West. Guys, you're great. I appreciate all of you. Spread the word. Michael Brooks Show, obviously. You're all patrons, so you're all the best people on earth. Mike Recine.
Thanks.
You know that you can get... Yes?
I watched a 2-hour movie to prepare for this show.
Oh, we didn't get to it.
But we'll do it on my show, maybe.
We'll do it on your show, and you'll come back soon. Cool. I'm sorry.
No.
It's the way things go. But we'll obviously talk about that movie. We know that. I want to see it with you, actually. To sit down with Mike Recine, check out Mike Recine. Thanks to everybody. This Sunday, Ken Klippenstein. If next Tuesday is October 1st, I believe, we will have Anna Kasparian joining us. Get your tickets to Philly. Thanks, everybody.